What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast. I just got lost in thought. Is my mic on?
Yeah,
I think it's because I'm using these headphones, yeah.
Yeah, these headphones are...
Restart!
No bueno.
What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast. I'm your host, Phil, and across from me is your boy...
Sun-Kish Josh Cook.
We are burnt.
I am burnt on my tootsies.
Yeah.
That's it, though.
For some reason, we both mostly just got burnt on the top of our feet.
Yeah.
And I usually don't get burnt. I was telling you in the car, I usually don't get burnt on the top of my feet. And then I looked, and there it was. We were on the river for like 5 hours today.
On the river.
That was a blast and a hoot and whatever else you can come
Highly
up with.
recommend if you're in Albany, Wisconsin, Sugar River.
Yeah. It's only
Sugar
45
River
minutes south of Madison.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that was a blast.
That was a lot of fun.
Rowdy.
So today we're just gonna have a chill episode. We're gonna be chatting about some stuff we've been up to.
Last one was intense.
Yeah. So the last episode, if you listen to it, you know. But if you haven't listened to it, go and check it out because we had a pretty intense discussion on that one. So
Yes.
This one will be chill, low key, which is good because we're pretty tired as well. So.
And a couple notes, as we usually say, everything you need for us, content-wise, popculturepunks.com. That's where you can find all your pop culture punks goodness, including a new blog post recently written by Philip about his dive into country music, which I never thought I'd hear or read about ever, but here we are.
Here we are.
There's that, and also a heads up for next week's episode. It will probably be a very Gonzo-style run-and-gun, very goofy, also lighthearted episode because I will be recording it with my younger brother and maybe my younger cousins while we're on vacation. Because we had this adventure today, the day we're recording this, and it went really long and it was really amazing. But we were like, "Frick, it's 6:30.
Our plan was
not
to
recording
record two episodes
We're
today,
like,
and
we're not
like,
doing this.
Nah, you can just do a fun one up there. So
not doing
you'll have 2 fun ones in a row probably.
Yep. And
then after that, we'll
maybe
probably
some
get back into
controversy
it.
because we'll be diving into Evangelion when that comes around. So
I need
that'll
to finish
be
that still.
Yep. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to kind of chew away at a little bit.
That'll be fun
so
one to
maybe
do with
that.
Zach. So
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. But
good deal.
Today we're here to talk about what we've been up to. So what have you been up to? What's on your list?
First, I appreciate that you called out that Tool is now on Spotify.
It is, yeah. I threw that on there.
I think they were one of the last. I don't think they're the last, but I think they were one of the last like very large bands holding out on the digital music scene because they weren't on anything. Like they weren't on iTunes.
You couldn't even buy their music digitally. I don't think.
Yeah, unless you. The only reason I got their stuff was through Amazon, just buying albums.
Yeah.
So, which in a weird way, I kind of dug it because it was like, man, I actually have to get the physical thing if I want to listen to it. So, I kind of like that. But super excited that all their music is on Spotify now. So, highly recommend. My favorite album of them is 10,000 Years.
Is that the one with like the black cover with like the face? Kind of?
And then Lateralis is a very close second.
Cool.
Lateralis, I feel like is just very technically sound, but there's a number of songs on 10,000 Years that I think are just like Wings for Marie and Right Into are fantastic. So those are great.
Cool.
Also, this is per a conversation we had Thursday was the great cheese debate.
Oh gosh.
So what was your beef with cheese again? It was
disgusting.
I
was called classless or what was it? A low culture or something?
Uncultured swine.
Uncultured swine. That's even worse than classless.
That's true.
I was called an uncultured swine because I thought aged Gouda was disgusting. And I will argue that is objectively true. I will stand by that statement.
What's your reasoning? Because you're the only one to defend your statement right now, so go for it.
Because it's disgusting.
It just is.
If you taste it, you'll know. Go to the store, buy some aged Gouda, and pop it in your mouth.
And eat it.
You will find out that Phil is in fact correct.
That boy knows.
Unless you're a man of culture, in which case somehow magically your mouth tells your brain that it's delicious. I think it's like coffee or alcohol. Like you kind of just
you got to eat it.
It's like Stockholm syndrome with cheese. Like you can
what?
You convince the cheese is around. The cheese is around for so long that you just kind of convince yourself that like maybe this is meant to be.
I think you have
Maybe-
like heat stroke or something.
Yeah, maybe this is a thing. So, or it's like coffee and alcohol. Like,
You just got to keep
does it
drinking
really
it.
taste good, or do you just like the effects? I think you just
So-
like you eat aged Gouda because you like the culture.
Because you like the crack in it.
But I would
Or it was
prefer
like
to. I
meth,
would prefer
wasn't
to
it?
eat a piece of cheese that tastes good, like an American slice, Kraft slices.
Kraft singles. Aged Gouda, get out of here. Kraft singles.
Give me an
yes,
American
please.
Kraft single on a chicken and a biscuit.
That is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
Oh gosh!
To
And
be
then there was
fair-
like some sort of meat and some sort of
Oh, it was like brioche or
Wine.
something,
the
and
meat
white
was
wine.
Gross. The wine was all right. I'll take that. I'd prefer Bud Light with a Kraft single. That's fine.
We'll make that video happen. You eating chicken and a biscuit with Kraft single slices on top of it with a Bud Light.
Yes.
That would be
That's awesome.
incredible. With a little ranch on the side. You can't forget the ranch.
Yeah.
Gotta have that side
So
ranch.
that's my
Anyway,
beef.
I wrote that down because I thought that was a hilarious conversation we had.
Yeah.
But so do you want to alternate? Because I feel like usually in the past.
let's alternate.
Okay,
Yeah, you go 1st.
I'll start out with the
Hit
first
us.
thing on my list. So and it's kind of funny because I remember, I think it was Dave when we were chilling with Imperius that weekend. He made a comment and I caught on to it where he was like, "Oh, I hated the Tick," and I was like, "Oh, Dave hated the Tick. It must not be good," because I value his opinion so highly. And I was hearing from my parents though that they're like, "We think you'd really like it. You should check it out." So I was intrigued because I had these two different perspectives,
Conflicting.
and I was like,
do you listen to Dave or do you
I don't
listen to your
know
parents?
exactly. And so I watched it. I really liked it.
I've heard it's funny.
It's very funny.
It's also
I love,
canceled.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
sucks. And I've only finished the first season. I haven't watched season 2. But there's, I don't know how to describe it, but I think I was trying to think of like what is jiving with me right now. And there's almost this lack of seriousness in it it's a subversive superhero show in
Yeah,
a
it's like a
lot
satire,
of ways.
isn't it?
Yeah,
of
it's very much a
superheroes
satire.
and a like a comedic satire.
Yes,
I don't know if satire is inherently
very
comical,
much.
but
Yeah, it's a very much a comedic satire about superheroes, and I just dig the vibe, and like it's funny in a way that didn't feel personally old to me. Because I know, like we were talking about, and one of your things is a show that has just come out that is very much the antithesis of that, where it's very serious and very violent, and it's a subversive hero show. So for me, it was like this show is a lot of fun, and I think I just like the kookiness. Like I almost want to say it's like a surrealist in a way, where it's like just, I mean, most superhero stuff is because it doesn't exist, but
yeah,
just like how things happen and like the characters, even the villain was hysterical, of just like the Terror, like that's just his name, and just like who he is, and like these weird, very unique quirks that each of them has, or like he fakes that he's like dead for a while. It's kind of like a spoiler. It's in the first 2 episodes, but one of the characters thinks he comes back, and so you see him later, and one of the characters is like, "What have you been doing this whole time?" And he's like, "You know, I always talked about playing the drums." She's like, "Yeah," and it's just like silence, and he's like, "I did it." so then there's like multiple scenes where he's like playing these like crazy drum solos like in his like lair or whatever, and it was just like one of those stupid things where it's like, why does this mega dangerous evil supervillain like play the drums like Neil Peart? Like he just does. And it's like, it's just stuff like that was kind of fun, and I liked the overextension and the hyperbolic characters of, you know, like the super violent, like almost Punisher like characters they like just poke fun at, and the Tick himself is probably my favorite character, just because he's very like, just some of his jokes and how he's written is the perfect blend of like the big dumb guy, but
who
he's like
plays
funny.
him? Is it like somebody famous?
It is. This is a very obscure way to reference the actor, but do you remember in Parks and Rec when Andy and Ben go to England?
Yeah.
And do you remember that guy that they meet where he's like the like
He's like a
Duke,
child,
or
like
like,
a man-child?
yeah, he's like basically Andy, but he's British.
But he's a British Andy.
That's
yeah.
the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the guy who
Interesting.
plays the Tick. So that was a very roundabout way of I should just know the guy, but I don't.
That's all good. I know Patrick Warburton has played the Tick in the past.
Yes,
like in
I think
the
he
old
was
show.
the vocal or the voice actor.
Yeah.
But But yeah, so it's been fun. I'm really excited to watch season 2, and they're only like 10 episodes a piece, I think, for each season. They're only 20 minutes. Excuse me. Oh, that sun. I'm tired.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, it was just like, it's just a very kitschy, very fun, very lighthearted. It's very easy to go through, and I think I could see it being really cumbersome and really irritating to watch if there were more episodes telling the same story. I think it moves so quickly that it makes it fun because you're not like, oh my gosh, this is getting old. Because I think it could have that effect if you like binged it, but I've just kind of watched an episode here or there, and I think because of that, it's kind of like, I like this. This is a good time. So, but that's it. Highly recommend. It's on Prime only though, so The Tick, and there's only 2 seasons, and it sounds like there will only ever be 2 seasons because it got canceled. Which
and they tried to have a campaign to save it, but couldn't get saved.
Yep.
And they tried to get somebody else to buy it. Nobody would buy it, unfortunately.
Which blows. I don't get it.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Too much stuff out there.
Shows are
days,
fickle.
I guess.
Yeah.
TV is fickle.
Very fickle.
Nice, dude.
Anyway, how about you?
I've been on a movie kick lately,
which is fascinating because I feel like you're always ragging on movies.
Yeah, I think it's weird to peg down. I think so. What kicked it off was watching The Hateful Eight, and I don't want to get too much into it because I have a blog post in mind for this.
Nice.
But The Hateful Eight was kind of what kicked it off with. I don't know, something in it was just like I saw dialogue and storytelling techniques that I haven't. Part of me is like, maybe I've been watching too many superhero movies and I haven't like experienced like good movies in a while. That not good movies and bad movies, but like more like artsy movies.
Yeah.
Movies that are written to be like a certain type of film. Or something.
It's not a Marvel action flick with.
Yeah, and like those are good movies and they have good stories and
Definitely.
they're well written. But like, there's a certain caliber that's above that. I think that I wasn't really getting into, just because like I'm not a huge movie guy usually. But yeah, that kicked it off, and I've been on like a Tarantino kick recently.
Nice.
So I watched Reservoir Dogs, which I think is on either Netflix or Amazon right now for streaming. I watched Django Unchained, which I had to rent, and then Pulp Fiction, which is on Netflix as well. And to be honest, I had never seen a Tarantino film.
I don't think I have either, actually, which I feel like is film blasphemous, but...
Which is funny because for some reason I had this perception that Tarantino was a bad director. I don't know why. Like, I feel like I just heard something once.
So like one guy, Tarantino sucks.
Yeah, and I just like internalized that for some reason. And like then I watched The Hateful Eight, which has an extended re-edited version that's in like 4 1-hour parts on Netflix as well. Which that just blew my mind, and I was like, man, this Tarantino guy's got something going for him. And he's controversial for his own stuff, but I don't necessarily agree with that usually, from what I've seen. But so that made me want to watch his movies, and ever since I've been watching his movies, I've just been like hooked on trying to find like directors and screenwriters and kind of like digging into the world of film and like parsing apart like, well, what does a director do and what does a screenwriter do, and like all these different things. And I stumbled upon Aaron Sorkin, who's a screenwriter. He wrote screenwrite. I'm losing my train of thought. He wrote the screenplays for like The Social Network.
Nice. Yeah. Because that name rings
the
a
Steve
bell.
Jobs
so.
movie.
Yep.
Like the good one, not the one with Ashton Kutcher in it. And I was like watching stuff on YouTube, like just scenes from those movies, and I was like, man, this like dialogue is really impactful. Like,
nice.
I think it's dialogue that is making me realize like a lot of movies don't have good like dialogue with tension in it. It's just kind of like talking.
Sure.
So that just got me hooked on movies, and then another aspect of that, I'm just kind of talking about all the films I saw.
No, go for it.
Another aspect of that was The Hateful Eight got me interested in like westerns, kind of, because it takes place in like the late 1800s, I think. So I checked out the Dollars trilogy, which is A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which are 3 spaghetti western films by Sergio Leone with Clint Eastwood as like the main character. So those were all 3 awesome and really fun. So yeah, I've been hooked on like westerns, and then kind of trying to find like older movies too. So I watched an old noir film from the 1920s called Double Indemnity, which is about like an insurance salesman who's helping this lady commit fraud so they can like take the money and stuff. It's just like a really interesting like crime noir
for sure
film. So I don't know, I've been on like a weird movie kick where I'm like interested in films and narrative and kind of like the writing process behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have some ideas and stuff that I want
Definitely.
to go over to write, like try and write a screenplay. I've got a book called Save the Cat that kind of like Blake Snyder. So
definitely. I was just going to ask, like, do you feel like this has kind of opened up the floodgates for potentially, because I feel like what's been fun about the podcast for us is there's been these things that we've watched to do an episode, which were not things that we would have normally watched. And because of those things, all of a sudden it was like, oh, we should do more stuff like this, or we should check more things out like this. And so,
definitely.
Do you think finding this is kind of like an open door now?
I think, because we did, what's that war movie called? I'm forgetting already.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge. We did that, which was directed by Mel Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
And then coincidentally, I watched one of those roundtable things that are on YouTube.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of those lately.
Those are fun.
And
I like those.
I watched one that actually had like Mel Gibson in it.
Yeah.
And just the way he talked about directing and stuff was just like, this is like, it just fascinated me. I had never thought about like screenplays and directing. I always thought that was like too Hollywood, like too. But like when you hear people talk about writing in the context of movies, it's like the same sort of feelings and stuff. And and a lot of these like Tarantino movies, I've downloaded the scripts on my tablet to like actually read through the scripts, and I was reading over vacation some other stuff. And one of my other things is that too, but I'll save that for later.
Sure. Awesome.
But yeah, I think doing the podcast has kind of opened me up to more avenues of like creative output.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think doing the podcast has opened up different avenues of interest for me, and it's probably going to turn into a thing where I'm trying to do too many things at once again. But
classic.
I don't know. I'm just interested in a lot of different creative avenues.
Definitely.
So.
Well, I feel like that's one of the lost things that I wish I would have heard or been encouraged to do more in writing classes, was actually finding, because all those things are written and there's a whole design and creative process behind taking the written word and then visualizing it and putting all these things together, and how do these people deliver these lines, and then even it gives you more weight, I feel like, to the actors, like actors being actually good actors, because I feel like it's like, oh, it's Chris Evans and he's just flying around and like jumping off of stuff, whereas there are actors who actually have to read a specific line in context and then act on it and do that, and then from there you have these amazing movies that are like, holy crap, like that was another world, literally. But
exactly. And a lot of the times, like with like a good actor like Henry Cavill as Superman, like he can't overcome a bad script or a bad screenplay. Like the screenplay has a lot more weight than you think it does. And the director's vision for the film. It's interesting getting a peek behind the curtain and seeing kind of the creative process as I've been like looking up videos and different things. So
right on.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm good?
Yeah.
All right.
What do you got?
Cool. So I highly recommend this book. It's a fairly quick read. It doesn't sound like it because it's like 420-ish pages, but it's the first book in a trilogy. It's written by Neil Shusterman, and he is a very like pretty quick writer. Like his sentence structure is very short, and his paragraphs aren't super long. Like there are a lot
like
of,
you said, it was like a young adult.
It's
sort of
it's classified as like young adult.
So
the premise is, so it's called Scythe is the first book, and the premise is humankind is in this kind of utopia state where they have cured death. Like death is no longer possible, or it is possible, but it's been cured by the masses, and there's these like nanites that live in everyone's bloodstream, and if something happens to you, they like release dopamine, and then you heal, and then you go to these med centers, and it's just like you just have to pay to be revived and stuff like that. But because now everyone's immortal, you need to stave off overpopulation, and to do that, humankind created two things. It created the Thunderhead, which is this like giant AI thing that kind of like governs and acts almost as if the internet was like sentient, is kind of how it's described. And then the second thing is the Scythedom, and that's where the book comes from. It's a group of people called scythes that are actually charged with quote unquote gleaning people to like permanently kill them. And so there's like this whole narrative of like the two main characters, like Citra and Rowan, learning about how to be a scythe because they're being apprenticed, but then they're like, there's all these complications that happen. They're actually very deep and philosophical. And so for what it was and what the book is about, it was like, this is not young adult at all. Like maybe style wise, it's kind of structured to be more simplistic, but I feel like the weight because the whole book is about death, and the whole book is about how people process through death and deal with death in a world where death has been defeated, except for these people that you have a, like, what is it, less than a 1% chance of running into. But if you happen to be that one person, like, you feel very differently. So it's a very, very, very fascinating story, and I just finished it yesterday, and I absolutely loved it. It was awesome. It was really good.
I saw that you guys actually have the second one.
Yes, and the third one comes out this fall. So I'm hoping.
Oh, so this is a relatively new.
Yes, yeah. The first book came in 2016. Okay. So it's not like brand new, but it's only 3 years old. So I don't know when the second book came out.
Did you just stumble upon it somewhere?
The funny thing is I literally saw the cover at Barnes & Noble one time when I was walking around, like, months ago, like maybe even a year ago.
So you did judge a book by its cover?
So I did judge a book by its cover because I saw this, like, dope character in, like, a red robe on the front with, like, this scythe, and I was like, scythe, that looks cool. So I flipped it over and I started reading it, and I was like, this is a book I would jam, and I super did. It's awesome. It's really good. I think, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just kind of fun reading something that I feel like actually something I kind of stylistically want to replicate. Like, I'm starting to kind of get into more books like that where I'm like, wow, this is actually something I could see myself writing in this style. Like, it's very straightforward. It's very quick. The sentence structure is very, like, not simplistic in that it isn't communicating good information, but it's just there it is. And I feel like one of the reasons I hated reading and writing when I was younger is that all the books we had to read and write were just flowery nonsense that didn't help me and didn't go anywhere, and that has its place, you know? But it was just like, I dig this.
So do you think this book has kind of kindled your love for books again?
Yes.
And more reading and stuff?
I think in a way, I think it ignited me to remember why I love stories. And I feel like it's because I feel the same thing like watching certain shows and stuff like that. But I think seeing, because, you know, I studied creative writing, and so to read something finally where I was like, I could see myself replicating this style and kind of latching on to how this is structured, and, you know, this book has a lot of weight behind it and, like, what it's talking about. And I think that to me was even more the weight behind it was just, it's not playing down like death or making it like goofy. It's just, it's like, this is a world that doesn't exist, will never exist, but it's asking very, very, very fascinating questions about, like, life and death and corruption when death is involved, and are people actually good? It's awesome. It's a really good book.
Cool.
So highly recommend. So Scythe. And then the second book is Thunderhead, as I said. And I still don't know what the third book is titled, but I heard from the guy at Barnes & Noble who I was picking it up, and he said, that's a freaking awesome book. And I was like, oh boy. So, and he said the third one's coming out this fall. So I was like,
he knew what it was and had read it?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I was like, dope. Here we go. Yeah. So new trilogy. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah. So that's it. Scythe.
So another movie-related thing that I got into over vacation was I downloaded So I basically just went to Reddit and searched, like, top 10 screenplays to learn from or something like that. Because I was like, I want to read some screenplays, but I want to read some that, like, people consider to be, like, representative of like a good screenplay. And a lot of them I was like, that doesn't really sound interesting to me. And I was like, I don't know, it's old or boring or something. And I'm sure a lot of them I would probably enjoy, but one that came up on a lot of lists was Whiplash, that movie that came out a couple years ago by Damien Chazelle, I think his name is. He also did La La Land. But it's a movie about a jazz drummer who's, like, trying to be, like, the best jazz drummer, and, like, he's at this school, and I downloaded the screenplay over vacation, and I was just, like, reading it, and, like, I could not stop reading it. Like, we'd just be hanging around the cabin, and I'd just be sitting there with my phone, because I only had my phone. So I'd be like sitting there just reading it, and I was like, I feel like I'm watching a movie right now, and I'm just reading, like, a screenplay.
Yeah.
So I just, like, tore through it, and it just fascinated me, because when you're watching a movie, I don't always think about, like, dialogue and character interactions, and, like, if a movie's done well, you don't notice the scenes. It's just a fluid thing. But when you're reading the script, you feel the jumps, you feel the scenes, and it's just like, it blew my mind. I was like, like there's no scenes in this script that
Mhm.
like don't need to be here, and like
Yeah,
you could
definitely.
feel the weight of each scene, and like I don't know, it was kind of like this light bulb moment that like blew my mind, and I was like, I need to like. That was kind of the first time I was like, I need to like look into writing
Nice.
screenplays. Like this
Definitely.
seems fun,
Yeah.
and I also had that Save the Cat book with me at the same time, so I was like kind of reading this and then reading the Save the Cat thing and looking up like
Mhm.
Whiplash beat sheet, and like people would like delineate and different things, and so it's just kind of it was fascinating to me seeing behind the
Nice.
scenes in that movie.
Yeah.
Plus it I haven't even seen it yet. I'm gonna
Yeah.
check it out
Yeah.
at some point, but like that's a good movie. Like it's intense.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
yeah.
So what do you think you've learned so far now that you're kind of combing through that screenplay?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned between Tarantino and this so far is that like the dialogue plays immense importance in movies, basically, because you don't really think about it while you're watching a movie, but most of what's actually like happening is just people talking or like dialogue or and stuff like that, and then there's a little bit of action scenes.
Yeah,
but then,
yeah.
Like everything that's propelling the thing forward in movies is usually just people talking, and so kind of learning how to portray things through people's interactions. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing right now that I've been trying to do is kind of just listening to how people talk, which is really hard because obviously not when somebody's talking to me, but like if somebody's having a conversation in like we were up north, and I would like listen to kind of how people interact and talk, and it's just I don't know, it's fascinating the difference between like a real dialogue and like movie dialogue. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting kind of thinking about how the screenplay format can translate into like a novel too, and kind of trying to use the pieces, and I'm always trying to find like new techniques and find my own technique that'll eventually work, and just testing things out.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the skills I'd like to develop in my writing is dialogue, which I feel like, as you said, is critical, and also just not using dialogue as a crutch though to do, because I feel like that's an easy thing that writers fall into, is just using it to explain everything, because that's not good either. And it's like that very fine balance between, even from the style and the creative side of how do I write this information so that someone understands what I'm saying about the world, but also that gives them this kind of like, oh, like how are they talking, and what are they going to say next, and how is this person going to behave, versus just being like, I feel this way, I don't like that you feel this way, sucks, we're going to fight now. Because I feel like that can, it's kind of like a tendency.
I think for me too, with like movies and TV, and I have The Boys on my list, but I was thinking about that too, where now when I'm watching movies and thinking about things, I'm like very acutely aware of how they're beginning the story, and especially in like The Boys, or even like Pulp Fiction, like the opening. At first glance, you're just like, why are these two guys like? What is the point of these two guys riding in this car talking about how like in France they call a double quarter pounder a Royale with cheese?
Yeah,
and it's kind of like the things you can do with dialogue are like enormous.
Yeah,
but like if you're not in tune with kind of how dialogue works, it just falls flat kind of. And I think a lot of the times if a movie doesn't seem right, it's probably because like the dialogue is off, or like things just aren't syncing.
Yeah,
and that's probably why Rendell that one time seemed so weird, because it was all like weirdly dubbed.
Yeah. I'm going now.
Yeah,
please don't. Like,
so yeah,
cool.
it's I don't know, it's like it's one of those things that like it's so small, but it like blew my mind when I read that script. I was like, man, like what the heck, I've been missing out on something. I don't know what it is yet, but now I want to read everything.
Dope.
So
I feel like that's what any artist can ask of their work, is it to be seen as like, wow, I can learn a lot from this.
Yeah, Damien Chazelle something. He seems fascinating because he's only made like 2 or 3 movies at this point. He's relatively new, and he was in one of those roundtable things that I watched too. I think he was like, I forget who he was with, but it was like a couple like big time directors, and he was kind of like the new guy. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dope. That reminds me, when you said Pulp Fiction again, there was a movie, I don't know if you ever saw it, called From Paris with Love. I think.
I've heard of that.
But it had John Travolta in it, and that to me is, I think, one of the is a more underrated action flick. Like that's a dope movie. And oddly enough, I think as I think about it, I feel like it was like the pre-John Wick. Like
Really?
I feel like that movie kind of laid the groundwork for John Wick, because I distinctly remember the action scenes being some of my favorite parts in the whole movie, of just like this John Travolta playing this like bald-haired, like foul-mouthed assassin FBI guy who kills in all these crazy ways that are realistic, but they're quick thinking, you know, very much like a John Wick style, where it isn't like choreographed, where it's like, here comes the punch, and here comes the baton, and here comes the gun. It's like, he's like, capture legs, bam, bam, bam. And
like it is
it's
choreographed,
awesome.
but it feels like
when
it's
you
not
watch it, you're
choreographed.
like, those guys do not know what they're getting into with this man, kind of thing. So, because I remember there's like an early scene where he fights a bunch of guys with, you know, like in a street, it's like a street brawl. There's like all these guys who like kind of come up, and his first move is he like rips the top of the chamber off of this guy's gun and like stabs him in the throat.
Jeez.
And you're like, oh, like frick. But it was just things like that, and then he just goes to town on all these guys. But that was a very underrated movie. I mean, it's not a Hollywood blockbuster that I think is gonna like deserved to be in the top echelon by any means, but I think as a fun action movie, I think that was one of the early vibes of like the Kingsman and John Wick style, like gun-toting
Interesting.
action movies. So
I'll check that out.
yeah, so from Paris with Love. And the reason I said that is because I think when you said the Royal, because I haven't seen Pulp Fiction, but the Royal with cheese reference, they actually do a scene like that, because the guy comes to him, he's like, I think it's like Charlie Wax is Travolta's character, and the guy comes to him, he's like, well, one Royal with cheese. And I just remember that being like, there was some guy in the theater when I saw it with my dad who was like, oh, that's from Pulp Fiction. Like, so
That's
I thought that was kind of
hilarious.
cool that they did that. But
That's funny.
anyway, cool.
Yeah.
I guess it's back to my turn.
What do you got?
Dude, Fire Emblem Three Houses is incredible.
We got to
Like,
do a gameplay video for that
oh,
one.
I
You'll have
feel
to
like
show me some
you
stuff.
it's hard because I feel like you can't, in a way. Like,
yeah,
we can,
it's hard to show
but
it like a good sample.
I
of
mean,
it.
like, if we're gonna play for 3 hours, like, sure.
yeah,
but,
we'll have to carve out a time where we play a lot and then get some
Right.
clips. Yeah,
yeah, but I feel like it's the perfect blend of a gameplay style that's more fluid and engaging with the RP, or the, you know, turn-based RPG combat, with the mechanics of like Persona. And I think like that's what I've really enjoyed about it, is it feels, oh, I can't say this, that'll get people riled up. I feel like it's done Persona better in a way. Which I think, depending on the person, that might be a strong statement.
I'm curious what you mean by
Yes.
not by that, but what about it is like Persona, like
right.
What
So
mechanics has
the
it taken?
main thing is that a lot of the game is about relationships, and there's literally, and it started with Fire Emblem Awakening. I think it was technically back in the earlier games, but I think when it was more prominent and used in a more fun and unique way was in Awakening, where you could build up your rank with your squad mates, and you do that by like putting squad, you know, like two people, if they like kill guys next to each other, like a little heart would go up, and you're like, oh, they're kind of like getting closer. So after missions and stuff, you'd have these moments where you could actually do called support chats, where it'd be like, this person needs to talk to this person. It's like, oh, they were just in the battle together. And depending on who it was, and depending on the characters and the dynamics, you'd get like this one character who's like, I can't stand you. And the other person's like, what's your deal, dude? And they're like at each other and like whatever. And like there's a character in Three Houses who so I chose the Golden Deer house, which there's the Black Eagles, Blue Lions, and Golden Deer, I think. But there's this character who's actually being trained by your dad in the game. And one of the first support conversations that you can unlock if you up your rank with her is, she's like, you don't deserve to be trained. You don't deserve to be your dad's son. Like, you're wasting it. You're not that good. Like, and she's just like on you, and you're like, I kind of like this girl. Like, she's like fiery and feisty, and she's like, I want to be better than you. I want to be better than everybody. I want to be better than your dad. Like, there's just these character things that you get to see come out of each of the characters that I think is very much in how Persona is designed. And that was one of my favorites about 4 Golden, was it's getting through the mission, doing all the turn-based stuff, so then I can go and spend like the 5 weeks of the month like going and talking to everybody and, you know, doing those side missions and like seeing what like Kanji's up to at like his mom's store. Like what is I'm trying to think of what of the other dude that's like your best friend or whatever.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But like, you know, who his parents own the store and like, oh, I'm like gonna go help him. Like there's this like weird, it's not fully slice of life because I don't like those games and I've never played those where it's just all life sim. But I think because it has that style where you're doing a bunch of stuff that all has consequences to like build relationships and up your abilities and do all this stuff. It just feels like there's nothing you do feels unimportant. And I think sometimes I really struggled with Persona 4 where it was just like, I can't play this game anymore. Like I so desperately want to get to the end and play the, you know, do these missions or whatever. I just can't do this combat anymore. I can't do these dungeons. I can't, it's too much. It's taking forever. It's too much leveling and grinding. And that's a JRPG for you. But I think because of the Fire Emblem side where the battles, you equally also get to build those relationships and like you can pair up and be like, oh, these people are having some interesting conversations. I'm going to send them and another squad of another two people and they're going to all go off together. I'm going to make, and then you actually like can play the game building their relationships as you're doing this and building it. Exactly.
And stuff based on who's getting along and who's not getting along.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's just this depth of the mechanics that's like, this is just so much fun to see. And all the characters are fantastic. I haven't seen a character I don't like yet.
So, do you know what the scale of the game is? Like, how long it's supposed to be? Or
one playthrough, from what I've heard, is 80 hours.
Wait, so at the beginning, do you get to choose which house you want to be in?
Yes.
Does that drastically change how the game plays out, or is it going to be pretty similar?
I think to a degree. From what I've seen, I haven't seen any spoilers, but I have seen that there's some major decisions that you need to make later in the game that actually impact things pretty drastically. And even, I'm only 6 hours in. I think Zach and Jordan are a number of hours more in, but even from what I'm gathering so far in the narrative, it's kind of building up to like there's something fishy in River City and like what's going on here. So because of that, I'm really excited to see where it goes because I have this feeling it's just gonna implode and it's gonna go crazy.
That sounds fascinating to me.
Yeah. So I just highly recommend it, and I think just praising it more in detail, there's all the things that you can do with building relationships and talking to people on your like off days and stuff like that, and they don't make getting around to them cumbersome. Like, and granted, Persona 4 Golden, when I played on the Vita, it's like an old game from the PS2 era, and they updated and did all this stuff, so like the mechanics are already kind of baked in. But I feel like the Fire Emblem crew took that and then made this easier where it's like, oh, you want to talk to this person? Guess what? You can not only fast travel to where they are, you can like see where on the map they are. You can like see where all these things, oh, you want to go do this today? You can just warp right there. And I think because of that, it's made it more exciting to play because I don't feel like now I have to wander around the city or this like academy. City that
you walk around?
You're in like a monastery. It's like, okay. I can't remember. It's got some funky name, but the monastery that you're a professor at, because the premise is you're a professor. You've been asked to be a professor to train one of these classes of students. So that's also one of the mechanics is at the very beginning of the week, you actually get to choose by building your relationships with your students. They have this motivation bar that you can fill. And with that motivation bar, when you go to the first Monday of the month or that week, you can then go and you can actually train and up their skills in their weapon type. But, let's say like you don't do a lot with certain characters, and so you have to be balanced where if you're like, oh, I like these three. Well, if you're only building their motivation, you won't have a lot of opportunities to grow the weapon skills of these other characters. You have to kind of like be aware of like how much am I giving to certain people and not others, which are my weaker characters, how can I maybe make up for that in the battles, like do I need to do more side mission, like
kind of like in Persona where you had to kind of pick and choose
exactly
who am I going to talk to today.
Exactly.
I can only hang out with one person that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. So I think
check that out. There's too many games this
year. There is, and it just I think because I was talking to Zach about it the other day, and I think he and I were just blown away of like, I did not think this was going to be this good, to be frank. I mean, I was excited because it's a Fire Emblem game and it's on the console, but
But it would be very easy for them to just make another Fire
Like a
Emblem
very
game.
safe Fire Emblem game.
The combat and everything is just
Same
what
kind of
you'd
generic
expect,
story. Evil villain empire. They're trying to take over the world. You
Yeah.
gotta be this band of bandits, and you turn good and you fight guys. Like, they could have done that, but they didn't, and they made this game that I think is giving Persona a run for its money. So
if they ever make a Persona for the Switch, maybe
Oh.
we'll find out.
oh,
They're making Shin Megami
Shin Megami Tensei.
number 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
Eventually, maybe we'll see what happens with that.
Definitely.
So, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll
so
check it out.
highly recommend.
Someday,
Definitely.
maybe
When you have more
maybe
time.
next year.
Yeah.
After Cyberpunk.
Absolutely.
There's nothing after Cyberpunk.
All
All
games
time
will,
is
all
lost.
games will cease.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So my last one is I finally finished the manga series Monster
Nice.
by Naoki Urasawa.
Nice.
I think I'm saying that right. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've tried and failed like 2 or 3 times to start it and finish it. Not because it's bad, but because I just get sidetracked a lot when I'm reading things.
Yeah.
But this time I was like, no, I'm finishing this book. And I finally got past the points that I had been at.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that series is a ride. I would highly recommend it for anybody who's interested in stories and like, especially like suspenseful stories that you never know what's going to happen. And just when you think you finally have the answers, like everything gets pulled out from under you again. And you're just like, oh, so this means this and this means this, but then that means this. And you're just like constantly like weighing all, and I think it would be very easy for a story like this to just feel cheap. Like, you keep changing and turning and changing your mind. But the way he crafts it is just like every turn of the road, you're just like waiting to find out the next thing. And
that's awesome.
but it's just kind of like you finally get to the end of the story and you're just like, holy cow, like what in the world just happened? And it's long.
sure.
I think, so they have volumes called like the Perfect Edition. They're pretty thick, which I think is 3 issues of manga. So it's like 27 issues overall, which is
it's a good amount.
yeah. It took me quite a while to finish, but I would highly recommend
Definitely.
it. If
That
you're
sounds
trying
awesome.
if you're like skeptical about reading manga, I think this story will prove to you that manga can be like
Definitely.
in a art form or whatever you want to call it.
Can you give a brief spoiler-free synopsis of what Monster is about?
Yeah, so the crux of the story, at the beginning of the story, there's a doctor, and he's kind of like a shining star. He's a Japanese doctor who's working in Germany, and he's dating the hospital director's daughter, and he's kind of like this like shining star, perfect surgeon, whatever. And these two people, so basically a kid comes in who's got like a gunshot wound in his head, and he's like, okay, I can save this kid. And he's like I said, he's a rising star. So he goes in to save this kid, and then the director of like surgery bursts in and says like, hey, the government, like some government official is here, and like he's critical, like we need you in this other room because this guy's more important than this kid. And he's basically like, no, like I'm saving this kid's life because he was here first. And it kind of like throughout the whole book, it kind of asks this question of like, what is the value of a human life and stuff. But this is kind of a spoiler, but it happens.
Like
it happens real fast, and it's
Yeah.
like the crux of the story.
Yeah.
That basically the kid actually ends up being like, he grows up and ends up being like this serial killer that's like killing all these people. And so the rest of the story is basically him trying to track down this kid and figure out like, who was he? Why is he doing this? Like, and it's just like all of this crazy unfolding stuff that I can't believe. It's hard to imagine that he crafted this story as well as it was crafted.
Wow.
Like, it's just crazy. I don't
Yeah.
know. So, and
That's awesome.
I love it. So,
Dope.
Yeah.
Sweet. Monster.
It's
I will,
crazy.
when I have some more reading time, I'll have to check that out.
I'd highly recommend it. There's also a
Absolutely.
show
Yeah.
as well, which I've heard is pretty accurate too.
That also sounds awesome.
I'm not sure where to watch it. I think it's harder to find.
Yeah,
but
I'm not surprised by
Yeah.
that. Cool. Yeah, so I will do my last one. I'll do like a side shout out instead of spending too much time on it. The other thing I was going to call out was Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Did that come out?
It did.
Wow.
It came out a week before Persona, which was
You mean
Or,
Fire Emblem?
Persona. Fire Emblem. Whoa, they're so close. I'm
Yeah.
getting the names mixed up. But yeah, so that came out a week before Fire Emblem, and also recommend. I think depending on what you're trying to get out of it, you may or may not like it, depending on what your personal taste is as a gamer. As a Marvel fan, I feel like this is the penultimate game that you could ever own. It's just the amount of characters that are in it, the DLC that's coming out with. They confirmed that Moon Knight, Punisher, Blade, and Morbius, I think, are all in the Marvel Knights DLC pack with additional story content. So you're telling me I can have Punisher and Moon Knight and Spidey and Iron Man all on the same team? Like, frick yeah, dude. So
that's cool. Is there like a story in the game, like a single player story mode?
It's like a very, very cheap knockoff Infinity War Endgame type thing. Like Thanos trying to get the gauntlet, and I like the pacing of it, like how they're doing it, because the way it goes is as you play, you unlock people that you can play as in the story mode, which I like, and there's actually some characters locked behind trials. I watched a review from Angry Joe, and I think he was a little over harsh on it, but I think for some of the stuff that he criticized about it, I agree in that if you're trying to do certain things, it's very grindy. It's level-based, which I like in one aspect because it means that you can progress. But on the other aspect, it means that you have to sit and kind of like replay the same thing. And for me, I just kind of like the beat-em-up style games anyway. And then I get to do it with my favorite heroes, so that's fun. But you kind of get locked in because if you don't level up certain heroes, you either have to take them and go back to earlier stuff and beef them up.
Oh, so like there's certain points where you need a specific hero.
Right. Well, not necessarily that, but like for example, like when Ghost Rider and Storm joined my team, like my guys were like level 15 and they were like 27. So because of that, Ghost Rider was thrashing and he was killing everybody. But I couldn't use Spider-Man really anymore because I was trying to try everybody, and I think because of how the story mode is constructed, these new characters that you get that come in are at a higher level than the guys you start with.
Does that change based on difficulty, or is it
that's just what it is. So that's like my one gripe is I think because of the depth is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because I think it adds a lot of layers to the game that are really cool, and I think give it a lot of replayability. I think at the same time though, they kind of make me not want to invest too much time in it, and I'm just kind of taking it for what it is.
Like it's not scaled properly.
Exactly. Like it'll be a great game that if, a bunch of us are hanging out and we're bored, like, hey, let's throw an Ultimate Alliance.
Is there like a brawl mode? Like
the game you can play like 4 players. Like everyone just controls their own super, and you just go around and do trials or fight guys or do whatever, so you can kind of do what you want. So
is there like a distinct separate mode from like the story? Like
there's like challenge modes, yeah. Okay. So I think Elektra and Magneto right now are the two that you can unlock in the challenges and stuff. Cool. And some of the challenges are pretty hard from what I've seen and read. Which again I think is good and bad because I don't know if they're hard for the right reasons. But anyway,
we'll have a discussion about in
a future episode. But I think if you are a huge diehard Marvel fan, absolutely buy it now. If you're not, I'd say it's still worth picking up just because I think like support Marvel, like the Ultimate Alliance games, because like I don't know, maybe that'll get them to release 1 and 2 on the Switch, which would be awesome. As like remasters or something. But I think it's a great game. I think it's a lot of fun. It scratches the right itch that I want it to scratch, which is just a mindless brawler. Like I spent 12 hours the first 3 nights I had it, just like going nuts, like just playing it nonstop and just picking up here and there. And it's a perfect game that if I'm just really feeling like playing a game for an hour, but I don't have a lot of time, just to like sit down and beat a couple things and be done with it. So highly recommend. So our Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and I've been looking forward to that since they announced it. And my last thing is actually akin to a blog post that I recently wrote about feeling like I'm going through a punk phase at 24, which is kind of funny. But it was inspired. So that post was inspired by a band called Fever 333, which is led by frontman Jason Aylin Butler. I had to make sure I got that all right. Who's the former lead singer of Let Live, which I also went back and listened to their music, and I also equally love it. But Fever 333 is like pretty hardcore punk. I'd kind of describe it as like a blend between like Rage Against the Machine and I don't even know who I would balance it with, but they've got the kind of hip. There's like a couple songs where they have some like deep like hip hop vibe, like bass and like literal like boom bap style like elements. But then 3 seconds later, it's this like thrashy, heavy just intense riff with some really sick drums.
Almost like maybe Rage
really,
crossed with like Beastie Boys or something.
Yeah, almost. So it's good. I really, really like them. And they only have 2 albums right now because I think they're a fairly new band. I think the first album came out in 2018, and then their most recent was actually this year.
Dang.
So Burn It Down is a main track from their most recent album. Made in America from their first album is really good. Animal, they have a song with Yellow Wolf on their first album. That one's pretty good. There's just, he just has this like storytelling about like growing up in California and like, cause he's biracial, I believe Jason is. And so just like, there's just this new perspective I feel like he's given to racial injustice, like through the punk perspective and this like really like visceral music that is just really resonating with me recently. So I think because of that, it's been like, man, I just can't stop listening to these albums and they're super good. So very, very intense though, like very punk, like very sharp, distorted, like almost like crackly vocals. Like they kind of do that, post like kind of thing when they're screaming. So
Let Live was too.
Yeah, they're
very,
pretty
like almost like underproduced.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
They were just letting him go ham on the mic and not fixing it too much.
Yeah. So, but I feel like because of that, there's just this vibe to it that's just super good.
Yeah,
so.
he's got a super aggressive voice.
And he's just a cool dude. I watched some interviews with him, and he's just like very passionate about like building a positive community and helping people in need. So he's an awesome dude. So Jason Aylan Butler, Fever 333, highly recommend.
Cool.
And that's it. That's my last rec.
That's all she wrote.
Frick, dude, I am so tired. I don't know how we did this.
Yeah, I gotta drive back home.
Oh boy.
But check out our website, popculturepunks.com. You can check out both of those blog posts from the last couple weeks and our previous 2. I think we have 4 up right now.
Yes, 4 total.
We're trying to do 1 a week, but the summer's been kind of crazy. So
life is just
they'll go up when they go up, and we'll post it on social media and whatnot. So check those out. Most of them are like 2 to 5 minute reads, probably.
Yeah, very
I think
short.
Mine have been probably longer than they need to be, but
I feel like
I'm learning to balance. My thoughts,
I was in a store yesterday, and Gloria read both of ours in probably like under 10 minutes. So. Yeah, so it's not a heavy investment.
Yeah, they're short.
So
mine said they like estimated on the top, and mine said 5 minutes. So that's nothing.
Which I think that's a dope feature. I didn't know.
Yeah,
Wix
I didn't know
that.
it was a thing either.
It's like way to go, Wix.
So yeah,
sponsor
Wix.
Sponsor Wix. Just saying. Anyway,
so cool. Check those out on our website.
Definitely. I was sorry, I like freaked out for a second because I was looking at the little lights and I forgot that I had turned one of these off. I was like, oh, did I not record?
Woo.
But we did. We're all good. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We will catch you on the next one. Next week, again, will be pretty low-key. It'll just be probably some goofiness and maybe some storytelling and just all-around fun. And we will keep you posted. So until then, we bid you all a fond cowabunga.
Job security, but I've been dreaming about packing it all up, cause the war in me just won't relent till there's nothing left but dust. So what do you do when the walls start closing in and everyone you love tells you it's all just in your head?